Julie, how'd you handle all these young guys coming in there all tore up?
Oh, it was terrible. And what was so bad, after I got into, I'll never forget during the Battle of the Bulge, I was with the 9th Army then, and I wasn't far from him. But they put in a bunch of fresh, I suppose that's what he was talking about around this Battle of the Bulge. These little kids from the country just coming in, 18, 19, they panicked and they left everything, didn't they, Sam?
Well, they
just
were
ran.
an unseasoned division.
It was terrible just to farve them, but what else can you do?
The Germans overran them.
And those old...
They had just gotten off the boat. They didn't even have the Cosmo on the rockets yet. They came in and took our place because they're supposed to be in a flat sector. And we'd been in combat for...
And the German SS troops and all that, why, there's no comparison to them. I couldn't even describe the ruin. Streetcars standing on the end, burning, and just terrible. And people pushing carts, and all these people, they said they knew nothing about it. They didn't know about these concentration camps, and I doubt that they did completely know.
Julie, her hospital, when Dachau, which was one of the two most notorious camps in concentration camps in Germany. When Dachau was liberated, her unit was sitting there to take care of them.
We got to see them.
They actually helped take care of those that were scheduled to die that hadn't been rescued.
They just worked them to death.
The ovens were still burning or still smoking when she got there. Now, I didn't see that.
And all the camps that I saw, all the labor camps, it's just like the Army. They were all built on the same order. And I went into one camp, they says, come on down. They wanted us to see them. The Germans had pulled out the day before, and they had them all segregated. Had the French in one part. Everybody that could walk, these people told us that everybody that could walk, they took them out. This wasn't far from Cologne. And we said, well, what do they do with them? And she said, they left us here in bed. But she said, if they were walking, wherever they were taking them, and if they couldn't make it, they'd just shoot them and throw them to the side. And they were hungry and, begging and crying and diarrhea and throwing up blood. I just can't tell you how bad they were. And begging for food, begging for bread, white bread. They hadn't had white bread in years. And
there's still Austrians that'll say the Holocaust never happened.
Well, they're crazy. And I went into the Jewish part. They were all segregated and they had poles. And they'd been liberated, and there were just thousands of them, hundreds of them, I don't know how many, but they're just milling around, and 20 people would live in a small little room, and instead of putting them in a bed like we would, sleeping, lengthwise, all they had, it was just lumber, wood, not finished or anything, just plain wood, like you go out and cut it down. And instead of putting them up like this, they turn them the other way so they can get more in there, and there'd be 20 or 30, and I suppose they slept in shifts. And we asked them, what did you do here? And they said, well, that they had an underground mine, and all they had to wear was those old striped, you've seen them in pictures, those striped blue and wooden shoes. Now this was in, I can't remember, I'd have to look in my book, but anyhow, they had all these old men, why they couldn't even walk. It was just the most, and they'd make them pull those carts like those coal mines, under the ground, and work them and whip them, and if they fell behind, and those poor old men, they were so weak they couldn't hardly go. And I mean old men, they said all they ever had was a potato peeling soup from the officer's mess. And it was just, and how Germany was supposed to be the most educated as far as culture and education, and they think that I think there's a bitterness there because they would have gotten by with it.
The Germans are very militaristic.
And don't you think they've done it
I'm a German
because they
ancestor
have.
myself. They're very militaristic and they're very cold-blooded.
And they're they are the super race. There was no question in my mind about, but why did they let Hitler do that? They're smart, they're intelligent, their cities were just beautiful. I was in all of the big ones. Every place we went, more modern than ours. They had that big Autobahn. I went clear to them, that big Autobahn highway, and it was wonderful. But why did they? Of course, I didn't see any of the...
I can tell you why. Because Hitler established youth camps. He took the kids away from their parents when they were young, 10, 12 years old, and put them in the youth camps. And they indoctrinated them, or brainwashed them, or whatever. The toughest soldiers we ran into were kids.
15,
18 to 20 years old were 22. That's all they knew. They were the super race, and they were the ones that they were supposed to rule the world, and by God, they were going to.
And he became a god to them.
Yeah, they were tough. The older troops weren't so bad. So it seemed like we fought. Of course, I could say I'm proud of my outfit. We were one of the crack outfits in the Army, and over there at least. And when they found a tough sector, we went in against their tough sectors. And we ran into a lot of their so-called SS troopers or their Panzer troopers or so on. And they were mean. They were just as cold-blooded and cold-eyed as any you see in the pictures. And this is what happened. That these youth camps indoctrinated them to the fact that
even younger
this was their religion, just like the Islam people today and so on.
Well, Julie, in that hospital, you had to make a lot of decisions that weren't very easy.
Well, no, you'd be shocked. Like I said, it's organized so right up to the front where we were. Our doctors that were with this field hospital I'm talking about now, I didn't stay in England. I went on and I followed the fighting. But it was organized to where, like Stan said, and we had 3 platoons, and there was always one out front working and one in reserve, and usually 2 are working and always one in the rest area. And we leapfrogged. But they had scouts out. We carried tents and everything, that if it came to where there was no buildings, we'd set up in these tents, and we did set up in tents. But they talked to the sisters. See, 90% of them are Catholic, everywhere I was, in Holland and Belgium and France. And they said, go to the convents, because if they can help in any way, they will. Well, we told, in Forum-Macon, Belgium, they were so short of food. They said, well, if you'll set up here, they had sent all these kids home on account of the buzz bombs. We'll let you live here and furnish the coal. They had coal, but said you furnished food. And we did. We stayed there for a while, and then they sent these scouts out. We'd stay till they scouted and found a place as the fighting moved on. And then we'd move in and set up. It didn't take very long. I don't know exactly how long, but it's even quicker now, before they disorganized these field hospitals. But they carried shock troops and surgical troops. Our doctors, all they did was take care of them after they worked. And these nurses that helped operate on them, they did all that usually each team had 4, and there'd be more than one team, and they worked day and night, and then our doctors took over, and then we had to take over from the doctors.
The field hospital, however, was the first hospital back of the aid station. The frontline troops had medics. The medics proved what they could on the battlefield and got the other patients out as much as they could. They went to an aid station, a battalion aid station, a regimental aid station, in the infantry company, in the infantry regiment division. And from this aid station, they went back to the field hospital, which was normally about 6 miles behind the fight. I think that's about right. Back where they could get vehicles back and forth. And this is where Julie was. They took care of the very severe cases. I expect they lost a lot. I expect they lost a lot of their patients.
They didn't make it to the field hospital, was the one that died. We didn't lose very many.
Well,
Once they got to you, they were somebody...
Not unless they had a severed spine where it takes a week for them to die. And there was times when we flew them out, but we didn't lose very many. You'd be shocked how this hospital mostly took care of abdominal wounds plus legs. They did colostomies and things like that. And that's what these shock troops were specialties in. And that's all we did, but you'd have multiple, you know. After they'd been through the emergency and the field hospitals and the station hospitals, then they'd go to the generals. And they had a lot of general hospitals all over England.
From the general hospitals, they shipped them.
Can you believe 4 million troops in a little, I don't know how big an area it was, but it was all the southern coast of England, and that's where we were in there. And I don't complain much. They were desperate for food, and we didn't go hungry in England, but if you left the post, you went hungry. There was nothing there, nothing. You couldn't give anything. They just, all they ate was rabbit and mutton. What else, Stan? It just wasn't. And then after we got in Germany, now people wouldn't believe it, but it's not due to the shortage or anything at first. You can't. It was a shipping. You can't get them there. You can't get it there if everything's blown up. And I went across the Rhine River on one of those is that what you call it, Stan? Pontoon bridges in an ambulance, and we stopped. Hitler had them to plant, or that's what they told us. I don't know, but he had them to plant fruit trees along especially cherry trees, all kind of fruit trees along these super highways and the highways. And we stopped at one place, and that's the first time we'd had any fresh fruit in months. And we stood on these ambulances and these trucks and ate it. But after we got in there, it's not that you have to get it there before you have it. And I was gone all that time, and I never had an aid. And everything was powdered milk and soap. We didn't have any soap. And when we got clear down to the southern part of Germany, it was just a fight to get enough. Well, all of a sudden, this fancy soap showed up. Maybe I told this girl that interviewed me, and we said, where did all the soap come from? And she said, oh, it's made out of the fat of these people in these camps. Now, I don't know. That's what they told us. And it was the only place that we ever saw any soap. Huh? Cremated, yeah, and they took everything off of these people. But can't you see why there'd be such bitterness? They exposed all that, everything they had done, and it was true. Like this one camp, there wasn't a living Jew in it. They took us over to the Jewish part. And you just wouldn't believe the crudeness of the camp. And how many machine guns they had. They couldn't get away even if they wanted to. And I saw a lot of those camps. And the first thing we did when we got them, after we got through taking care of these wounded ones, I asked some people, I said, some old men, everyone had a partner. No one was alone. Every old man, if he was 60, he had a 60-year-old man. And I says, how come? And he says, we want a witness. He says, one of us will survive maybe. And he says, we've got families, and we want a witness and someone that will carry on in case we're gone. But this one old man, he had been in America, he'd been in the Dutch Navy, and he was probably right up 75, maybe older, but he could speak English, and he was on this ward where we were and set up. And I asked him, he helped man, these people were like dogs. Worse than dogs fighting over anything that was edible. And we needed someone to control them. The only way you could do it is just to get in there and act like you're going to beat them or something, and get back and everything. And I asked him, I said, he told me where he came from and everything, and he was in this underground mine. And he said, his home was in Holland somewhere, and he said, if I get home, he said, I'll send you a card or something. And I told him my address and everything, and I did. I got a card from him, and he said that all the underground and everybody came in. His daughter had written the card. And she said her dad had gotten home, and this other old man that was with him had gotten home, and they had a big celebration. Everybody had any food brought it over to celebrate.